My name is Peter Raftopoulos and I'm the President of the Ithacan Historical Society, and I thank you for being here today. I also thank our parent organisation, the Ithacan Philanthropic Society, for their great support, and we especially appreciate their annual $10,000 funding program that they help us do things like we are today. So we appreciate that, and the President here, Nick Anagnostou, is here today. We often dwell on the heroic things that King Odysseus did, but today we're focusing on and paying homage to the many Penelopes of Ithaca that have been over the centuries. And they've worked so hard to create such impeccable pieces of textiles, as you can see all around you today. I would like to thank Penelope Vakalopoulos and Debbie Argyropoulos and Christine Georgopoulos, and who spearhead the textiles team. They're putting in an excellent event today, and it's great to see such young women doing such great things in our club. So now I welcome Penelope Vakalopoulos, and we look forward to hearing her presentation.
Thank you everyone for gathering with us today. It's with great joy that we launch our Textiles initiative and renew the legacy of the previous textiles group, Penelope's Loom, which ran at the Ithacan Philanthropic Society a number of years ago before it was discontinued. And what better way to do so than to throw the spotlight on these phenomenal pieces of material culture that so many of our members have inherited and kept lovingly as cherished heirlooms. This new iteration of the Textiles project was born just last year, when a small group of us came together to brainstorm how we might be able to revive an interest in fibre crafts, support the contemporary practice of these crafts, like weaving, knitting, sewing and embroidery, as well as to document and celebrate the incredibly rich heritage of textile production and material culture that we are blessed to be connected to through our Ithacan and Greek heritage. This initiative is quite ambitious. It's still in its infancy. Most of us aren't qualified in the field, although our special guest, Kathryn Gauci, certainly is. But all of us understand that textiles deserve commemoration, and the long and deep traditions of their production deserve some sort of continuity in our present lives and in future generations of our community. As such, our project aims to encompass both modern day revivals of craft practice by providing a space and opportunities for workshops and craft gatherings and demonstrations, but also aims to preserve and elaborate the unique history of textile crafts in our Ithacan heritage, to document and share textile related anecdotes and stories, some of which will be read today, and to share and exhibit the incredible handmade heirlooms, rugs, linens, wall hangings and various other forms of cloth and fabric like those on display today, which all hold within their threads and stitches an immense weight of meaning, memory and history. It's an honour to provide a space today for these heirlooms, as well as to showcase some newer textile creations. We have our kind of archetypal Ithacan textiles on this side of the room, and our newer creations in the back right corner over there. So not all of the pieces on display today are specifically Ithacan in their motifs and their history, but all of them were handmade with love and care and patience, and with the kind of attention to detail with which everything was made throughout most of human history. I just want to run through a brief kind of history of, I guess, the social significance of textiles. Textiles today can sometimes seem a bit of a niche area or a hobby, and no longer a central element of the household economy. Perhaps Yaya still pulls thread as a way to while away the hours, or perhaps we taught ourselves to chain yarn with a crochet hook during lockdown, or did a once-off weaving or embroidery class. If you tell someone that you're interested in the history of handmade textiles or in their practice, their response is likely one of curiosity in what is otherwise considered today an area of cultural preservation more than anything else. And this is quite ironic, because if we look back in history, we see that until the comparatively recent industrialisation and centralisation of textile manufacturing factories, handmade textile production played an enormous role in almost all cultures and civilizations for millennia, and it was at the very centre of economy, trade and culture. Now that the crafting of cloth is no longer done primarily by human hands, but instead outsourced to machines, it's pretty easy to neglect just how central textiles were or are still in our everyday lives and communities. They clothe us, they keep us warm, they carpet our floors, they wipe our benches, they express our identities and our ideas and our cultural motifs. They become symbolic mediums for social, political and religious communication, and without textiles, we would be nowhere. There's one more crucial piece to this story, which is the role of women. Textile history is also women's history. There are certainly some exceptions and areas where men played important roles, but by and large, both the archaeological and anthropological record tells us that textile production was always predominantly women's work. There are many reasons for this, but primary among them is the fact that spinning wool and weaving and other fibre crafts are compatible or were compatible with full-time child rearing and caretaking because they're safe and easily interruptible and undertaken close to home or in the home. And because full-time child rearing historically involved nursing for a number of years, it made sense that fibre crafts were predominantly women's work. Looms could be raised off the floor and weaving could be completed intermittently with children underfoot. Spinning was a relaxing activity and repetitive and could be undertaken while chatting, watching children stirring a pot on the stove, or even riding on muleback. And all of this is outlined by the textile archaeologist Elizabeth Wayland Barber in her seminal work, Women's Work, The First 20,000 Years, which I very much recommend for anyone interested. Because entire communities depended on textile production for their livelihoods, this positioned women as essential agents of households, and the financial viability of the house once upon a time actually did revolve around textile production as much as it did around agricultural yields and other things of that sort. Textile practices also grounded and integrated relationships, both within the family and local community. These crafts were collaborative activities, which required input from multiple women at once, and whether they were female relatives or entire neighbourhoods and village units. The warping of a floor loom, I'm sure some of our members today have seen this in action. It's incredibly laborious and time-consuming, and it requires multiple hands, but it becomes a powerful conduit for chit-chat and gossip, kotobuya, deeper conversation, storytelling and song, and these are all essential ingredients of social cohesion. And I'm sure some of our older members have memories of this kind of communal activity surrounding textile production, and also remember a time when every house in the village had a loom. Before I introduce and hand over to Debbie, I just want to throw a brief spotlight on an amazing woman named Bridget Moraitis, and she's wife to Panayis Moraitis, and they live in Kioni in Ithaca. Bridget was Austrian born, but she married and has lived on the island for 30 years. She's one of only a few women who are still using raw Ithacan sheep's wool and incorporating that wool into various fibre crafts projects. I met Bridget and Panayis when we stayed in their Airbnb in Kioni several years ago. Panayis is a farmer from generations of farmers, and he keeps pure ancient breeds, as he says, pure ancient breeds of Ithacan sheep and goat, and he shears his sheep by hand every season with traditional manual scissors, so nothing electric. And Bridget comes in and she processes this wool, she cleans it, she dyes it with, sometimes not always, but when she can, botanical pigments from the surrounds, and she brushes it and spins it on a traditional spindle into threads of yarn, which she then, you can see the spindle there, she then incorporates this into various weaving, knitting, felting, and sewing projects, including clothing and bags and decorative wall hangings, which are all 100% made by hand. Bridget taught me to spin, although I can't, don't test me because I can't remember much of the spinning process, but she also taught me to weave on a frame loom, which she'd made herself. And 4 years later, I now have my own loom. I have a very wide 4-shaft table loom, and I've been developing my weaving skills further, but I'm still very much an amateur. I have some of Bridget's amazing creations on display today just in the back corner. which incorporate pure Ithacan sheep's wool and botanical pigments, as I said. And I also would like to mention that if anyone's interested, she's always happy to share her knowledge of spinning and weaving if you visit Kioni. Okay, lastly, I need to very loudly and publicly acknowledge the phenomenal efforts of Debbie Agiropoulou in getting this project and especially this exhibition off the ground. I don't say this figuratively, literally, we would not be here without Debbie. There's not a chance. So she's been amazing, her planning, her organisation and her networking and getting everyone, amazing people involved, diverse people involved, all kind of clustering around this topic of textile production and textile history, and her creative energy and her own incredible set of heirloom textile pieces which are on display today. Thank you, Debbie, you've been amazing. Everyone else who's contributed to the project so far, Christine and Geliki, who's actually based in Holland, and we've caught up with her online on Zoom. We have Peter and Kyriaka, of course, for their unfailing support. Melanie, Debbie's friend, who helped curate and style the exhibition space so beautifully. And all of the other members, John and other members of the executive committees of both the IPS and IHS who have helped out today. I also thank our guest speaker, Kathryn Gauci, but I'll introduce her a bit later on. And anyone else who's brought in a textile today or contributed an anecdote, thank you very much. Without further ado, here's Debbie to talk about the filet.
Thank you, Penelope, for such a beautiful opening. The reason I'm here today is actually because of you and Christine. I was inspired by your enthusiasm and just wanted to help you in any way I could. I'm a storyteller, so I just wanted to help share your stories. I've never been very good with crafts, no matter how much my mum tried to show me. I simply didn't inherit that gift. I also never had the chance to ask her about the filet she made as a teenager, something I've always been determined to understand. So that's the filet on my right, and that's a picture of her at around the age of 16 making it in the village of Lefki in Ithaca. So we never had any conversations about this, so I was, it's always been a bit of a mystery for me. The iconic photo of her has left me with so many questions. Judging by her appearance, it was probably taken around 1953, before the devastating earthquake that destroyed her village and left her with no option but to leave for Australia. Past President Lula Kutsuvelis introduced me to the word filet. It's a lace-making technique that's part crochet, part embroidery, and very intricate. Lula tried to explain how it was made, but I simply couldn't picture it. That changed this summer in Ithaca, where I met Urania, one of the few women who still practices this traditional craft. I could never have imagined the skill, patience, and precision it requires, or the sheer amount of time involved. The base of the filet is a handmade net. The net is then stretched out onto a wooden frame to keep it tight and even. You have to position yourself over or alongside the frame so you can reach the middle easily, a bit like playing a harp, and embroider your designs. Still mind-boggling to me. I'm so pleased to be able to pass this knowledge on to all in my own way, through story. This iconic poster, which was displayed at the Immigration Museum in 2016, not only features my mother with her filet, but also in the top right corner, shows her again with her mother, her grandmother, and her aunt harvesting grapes together. 3 generations. Below right, you can see my grandmother, her sister, and probably all the neighbourhood women gathered to tend to the rigani. They worked together and shared stories, something that feels perhaps a bit lacking today. I also have a wooden suitcase there that was made by my uncle Spiro in 1964. He was a proud member of the Ithacan community. Putting this event together has given me a glimpse into what it might have felt like for the generations before us, gathering, creating, and sharing their work with love and purpose. In particular, on Thursday, I invited Melanie Kamakamas, daughter of Katerini and granddaughter of Savula Raftopoulos from stunning Exoyi. Melanie, an exceptional interior stylist, kindly donated her time to style the room for today's event. We spent a beautiful day together here with Katerini and also with Adriana and Kristalenia, who came to help. Strangely, although they had never met before, Thursday marked the beginning of a new friendship and a lovely reminder that these gatherings continue to weave new stories, just like the crafts themselves. The other picture used as the image for today's events shows my grandmother's yellow and white rizzo, which is there. I found that in Sydney at my uncle's house. I just love the colours there. I haven't seen yellow and white. I wanted to highlight a couple of pieces that I've learned some history about. This magnificent tablecloth over there, the white one, carries the work of 3 generations. The final hand to complete it was Adriana Zervoulis, now 86 years young, Kristalenia's mother. It began with Adriana's grandmother, who wove the linen cloth. Her mother then carefully finished the edges with a tripogazi, and years later, Adriana embroidered it here in Australia. The design was inspired by a tablecloth she admired at the home of Gioia Florence, whose permission she asked to copy it. It says, "Na θυμόμαστε τους φτωχούς." Let's remember the poor in the middle. And the word inos in one corner, ancient Greek for wine, would that be right? Yeah. And also Ithakis in another corner, and of course her mother's initials at the bottom left, Adriana Zervoulis. So I just think it's just a masterpiece. They use it every Christmas, and I can't believe that there are no stains on it. And it's just amazing. I think this year they've decided with the grandchildren they might put a plastic cover on it. I said that would be great. Underneath are some beautiful handcrafts from my friend Angelina's yaya, who came from Samos. And among them are her late mother's christening sheets from the 1930s. If you take a closer look, they're just spectacular. So today's event is to celebrate all textiles from everywhere in Greece and the world, using Ithaca to start the storytelling. Every piece on display is stunning, but more than that, each tells a story. Some we know, others we can only imagine. I'd like to thank all of you for coming today to help share your stories and your history. Enjoy the rustic video.
Λοιπόν, είμαστε στο μαγαζί της κυρίας Μαυρομάτη Ουρανίας. Σήμερα είναι 26η του μήνα Αύγουστου το 2025. Η Ουρανία Μαυρομάτη είναι από τις λίγες πλέον κυρίες που γνωρίζουν πολύ καλά τη τέχνη του φιλέ. Το φιλέ διακοσμούσε τα σπίτια στο Θιάκι τα τελευταία 200 χρόνια. Θα μας πει κάποια πράγματα, θα μας δείξει κάποιες βελονιές. Ουρανία, θέλεις λίγο να μας πεις πώς ξεκίνησες? Ήτανε η γονή σου, ήτανε νόνος?
Φίλε, ήξερε η νόνα μου η Ουρανία. Τα χρόνια που ζούσε η γιαγιά, η νόνα, δεν υπήρχε η σαΐτα.
Ναι.
Κάπου τη δική της την είχε χάσει. Πάντα έλεγε ότι πιάνει το χέρι μου, ότι βλέπει το μάτι, φτιάχνει το χέρι μου, ότι βλέπει το μάτι μου. Αλλά δεν ήρθε τελικά να μου δείξει το πώς πλέκουνε το δίχτυ. Όταν μια γιαγιά άσχετη, βλέποντας ότι έκανα διάφορα μες στο μαγαζί, ήρθε και μου χάρισε την πρώτη μου σαΐτα, έπρεπε να βρω άνθρωπο να μου το δείξει. Ο πιο εύκολος βέβαια ήταν η κόρη της, η Κατερίνη.
Μιλάς για ποια κυρία? Πώς είναι το όνομά της, η κόρη της η Κατερίνη?
Η Λιβάνη.
Α, η κόρη της νόνας σου λοιπόν, η θεία σου η Κατερίνη Λιβάνη, ναι. Κασιανού Λιβάνη.
Κασιανού Λιβάνη.
Ναι.
Έλα μου λέει να το δείξω, αλλά έχουν έρθει πολλές και ξανάρχεσαι. Πήγα, κατάφερα να πλέξω, να μάθω τον κόμπο και να πλέξω εκείνο το απόγευμα για 2 ώρες. Ένα κομματάκι τόσο, το τελάρωσε απάνω σε ένα χαρτόνι και μου έδειξε και το πώς κεντιέται. Και αυτό ήταν το μάθημα.
Οπότε για να κάνουμε το φιλέ χρειαζόμαστε σε πρώτη βάση το δίχτυ.
Ναι, πρέπει να πλέξουμε το δίχτυ. Εγώ πιο κοντά.
Άρα ο παραδοσιακός τρόπος είναι, από μια καρέκλα το έχω δει και εγώ σε σχέδιο,
Ναι.
η αλήθεια είναι.
Κάπου που να είναι σταθερό.
Μμμ.
Ή σε μια γωνία από τραπέζι, αν είναι ξύλινο και μπορούμε να βάλουμε ένα ούπα, ένα σίδερο.
Και χρησιμοποιείς
Μια
μία κλωστή και...
Χρησιμοποιώ όση κλωστή μπορεί να πάρει η βελόνα μου,
Ναι.
η σαΐτα μου, και χρειάζομαι και ένα σταθερό είτε βελόνα είτε τα καινούργια υλικά που έχουν στο εμπόριο τώρα,
Μμμ.
και ανάλογα το μέγεθος βγαίνει και το μάτι. Βγαίνει και το μέγεθος
Του
της
τετράγωνου,
τελίπας που θα φτιάσει.
Αυτό το λέτε μάτι.
Ναι.
Ωραία, για να λέμε και τη χρονολογία του
Ναι,
δηλαδή.
δηλαδή αυτή η βελόνα 3 νούμερο που πλέκουμε μπλούζες, βγάνει αυτό το μάτι.
Μμμ.
Αυτό όμως θέλει πολύ μεγαλύτερη.
Κατάλαβα.
Η τεχνική είναι αυτή, δηλαδή ο κόμπος είναι αυτός. Και πλέκεται διαγώνια, ξεκινάς από ένα πόντο και ανοίγεις
Αχα.
και μετά όταν φτάσεις στις πόντους που θέλεις, στα μάτια που θέλεις, αρχίζεις και κλείνεις αντίστοιχα.
Ωραία. Οπότε αυτό είναι το βασικό μοτίβο που συναντάμε στο...
Ναι, για να πλεχτεί,
Για να πλεχτεί πάνω
το
του.
δίχτυ.
Ναι. Ένα εργόχειρο, ας πούμε, στο μέγεθος μιας μαξιλαροθήκης. Φαντάζομαι ότι έχει να κάνει και με την πυκνότητα και με το κέντημα
Ναι,
και
το
με
πόσο
όλα.
μεγάλο είναι το μάτι
Ναι,
και τι διαστάσεις έχει.
ναι.
Αυτό, ας πούμε, αν αυτό ρωτάς, εμένα μπορεί να μου πάρει και να δουλέψω 8ωρο ένα μήνα.
Ναι, κατάλαβα.
Γιατί χρειάστηκε, ας πούμε, παραγγελία να μου το ζητήσουν και να έχω περιθώρια στενά, και αναγκάστηκα να δουλέψω 8ωρο. Θέλει, γιατί θέλει και το κέντημα λεπτομέρεια,
Βέβαια.
θέλει και το πλέξιμο το χρόνο.
Αναλαμβάνεις να κάνεις κάτι τέτοιο?
Ναι, έχω φτιάξει
Ωραία.
αρκετά πράγματα.
Ωραία.
Το δίχτυ προτιμώ το μπαμπακερό για να έχει αντοχή στο χρόνο.
Ωραία, που είναι καταπληκτικό. Είναι πιο μπέζ. Θα ρίξουμε ένα ύφασμα πίσω, έχεις μια πασμίνα, δεν έχεις? Και είναι το ίδιο υλικό με αυτό που έχεις φτιάξει εσύ τα υπόλοιπα?
Όχι, δεν είναι το ίδιο υλικό. Είναι μπαμπακερό νήμα που το λέγανε πυρσίμι. Και έχει χαθεί από το εμπόριο.
Οπότε είναι μια άλλη ποιότητα
Είναι
νήματος.
μια άλλη ποιότητα νήματος.
Ναι, κατάλαβα. Απίστευτο όμως πως πετάγανε τέτοιους θησαυρούς.
Ναι. Κάποια στιγμή ο Νίκος, η κυρία Δώρας, ο εγγονός, άκουσε, κάποιος το άκουσε που το έλεγα στο μαγαζί και πήγε και του το είπε. Μάλλον κάποιος διάβασε ότι γράφει Δώρα Κολυβά.
Κατάλαβα.
Και ήρθε και μου λέει, αυτό που το βρήκες? Λέω, το θέλεις? Εγώ μου πόνεσε που είδα να είναι στα σκουπίδια και το μάζεψα.
Ναι, λογικό.
Επειδή ξέρω να φτιάνω και μου πονεί, θα νιώθω
Είναι
κομμάτι
καταπληκτικό.
της ζωής μας.
Και τόσα χρόνια δηλαδή.
Ναι, και εκτεθειμένο, δεν είναι ότι χρησιμοποιούνταν και πλένεται και ξανά
Ναι.
ζωντανεύει.
Ναι, ναι. Μάλιστα. Οπότε υπάρχουν διάφορα τελάρα για διάφορα...
Ναι, το τελάρα.
Αν θέλεις να κάνεις ένα πάρα πολύ μεγάλο, ένα τραπεζομάντιλο, θες να κάνεις μια κουβέρτα ή οτιδήποτε, το κάνεις αποσπασματικά και μετά το κεντάς ή το κάνεις ένα τεράστιο τελάρο?
Υπάρχουν πολλές τεχνικές, δηλαδή ακόμα και σε αυτό το τελάρο μπορώ να το τελαρώσω τμηματικά.
Ναι.
Αλλά συνήθως σε φτιάχνανε τελάρο να μπορείς βέβαια να το δουλέψεις, να
Ναι.
φτάνεις τα χέρια σου στη
Ναι.
μέση του εργόχειρου,
Ναι.
γιατί θέλεις να το αγκαλιάζεις, δουλεύεις και τα δύο χέρια.
Α, μπροστά
ταυτόχρονα
πίσω δηλαδή
για να
δουλεύετε.
δουλέψεις τη βελόνα.
Μάλιστα.
Οπότε το πιο εύκολο ήταν να είναι ένα μικρό τελάρο από τμηματικά.
Τμηματικά δηλαδή
Ναι,
και
τα
μετά για να
τελαρώνεις,
υπάρχει μια
ναι.
σειραφή ουσιαστικά.
Όχι, δεν φτιάνεις κομμάτια, φτιάνεις ένα μεγάλο δίχτυ
Ναι.
και το τελαρώνεις τμηματικά.
Έτσι. Ωραία.
Εγώ βέβαια το πιο μεγάλο που έχω φτιάσει είναι το τελάρο που έχω στημένο από πίσω και ήταν μόνο κόμματα. Ήταν όμως πρόβλημα.
Αυτό που έχεις φτιάξει ήταν τραπεζομάντιλο ή ήταν κουβέρτα?
Ναι, ήταν ένα μεγάλο τραπεζοκαρέ, είναι 1,5 επί 1,5.
Ωραία. Αυτά σε πρώτη φάση. Θέλεις να μας δείξεις πώς γίνεται το κέντημα?
Το κέντημα, η νοοτροπία του είναι μία κλωστή απάνω, μία κάτω. Τώρα δεν συνεχίζω, απλά σας δείχνω
Ναι.
πώς θα
γίνεται.
πάει η κλωστή. Αντίστοιχα η επιστροφή.
Για να γεμίσει δηλαδή και να δώσει το
Για
σχήμα.
να γεμίσει και να δώσει, ναι, και μετά θα το πας σταυρωτά, πόντο, κλωστούλα, μετρώντας όλες τις κλωστές, είτε είναι το μπαμπακερό, είτε είναι η μεταξοκλωστή που αυτή τη στιγμή δουλεύω σαν κέντημα.
Ουρανία, γνωρίζεις πόσες κυρίες ασχολούνταν με όλο αυτό στο φτιάκι, με τη τέχνη του φιλέ? Ήταν κάποιες που έκαναν μόνο φιλέ ή ήταν γενικά κεντίστρες ή...
Γενικά ήταν γυναίκες που εκείνη την εποχή από τις συνθήκες ζωής αναγκάστηκαν να μείνουν σπίτι, είτε προσέχοντας ηλικιωμένους, είτε προσέχοντας παιδιά, είτε επειδή κάποιος αδερφός επέθανε δεν έπρεπε να βγαίνει στα χωράφια, όπως ήταν η νόνα μου ας πούμε που τη βγάλαν από το δημοτικό γιατί επέθανε ο αδερφός της στα καράβια. Και μέχρι τα 22 της που παντρεύτηκε δεν ξαναβγήκε από το σπίτι.
Ωραίες ζωές.
Είναι, ναι. Όμως φτιάχνοντας φιλέ η νόνα μου με τραπεζομάντιλα που είχε από την πρίκα της, αγόρασε στάρι με τον πόλεμο και τάισε την οικογένεια.
Δεν έχουμε χρωματιστά φιλέ. Βρίσκονται.
Μαύρο δίχτυ με χρωματιστό κόκκινα πράσινα λουλούδια.
Αυτά γίνονται εδώ ή έχουν έρθει από το εξωτερικό, γνωρίζεις?
Κοίτα να δεις, νομίζω ότι στο Θιάκι ήταν χρονολογία όμως μετά τη μικρασιατική καταστροφή.
Όχι, είχαν έρθει πριν.
Πριν.
Τα φιλέ, ναι.
Ήρθανε γυναίκες και δείξανε φίλε για ενίσχυση της οικιακής οικονομίας.
Ναι, αυτό είναι γεγονός, όντως γινόταν.
Αλλά δεν θυμάμαι αν ήταν το 10 ή το 20. Δηλαδή...
Ναι, έχεις δίκιο, γιατί υπήρχαν κυρίες οι οποίες ερχόντανε, γιατί υπήρχε και ένας σύλλογος κυριών εδώ πέρα, που αναλάμβανε για τα νέα κορίτσια να κάνει τέτοιες οικοτεχνίες λεγόταν τότε και εργόχειρο. Οπότε, ναι, υπήρχε και αυτό, αλλά το συναντάμε και σε πιο παλιό, δηλαδή και στο λογογραφικό υπάρχουν του προηγούμενου αιώνα.
Ναι,
φιλέ.
μήπως όμως τα φέρανε από Ρουμανία έτοιμα. Δεν
νομίζω, δεν ξέρω, αλλά...
Κάποτε ο τηλέμαχος ο Καραβλίας είχε μια μελέτη, τη διάβασα στο Facebook εκείνη τη στιγμή και μετά την έχασα.
Σίγουρα υπήρχε δηλαδή και πιο πριν, υπάρχουν σε πρίκες, υπάρχουν σε διάφορα.
Ξέρω τι βρήκαμε στο σπίτι από την νόνα.
Η νόνα σου πότε είχε γεννηθεί?
Το 4.
Η νόνα σου λοιπόν το διδάχτηκε από κάποια κυρία που ήρθε?
Όχι, από την ξαδέρφη της που είχε διδαχθεί από τις κυρίες. Οπότε ήταν πρωτήτερα ακόμα.
Σε ευχαριστούμε πάρα πολύ. Θα σε ξαναενοχλήσουμε σίγουρα.
Να είστε καλά.
Να είσαι καλά και εσύ. Και ευχαριστούμε και για τη βοήθειά σου που είναι ανεκτήμητη και για το ότι συνεχίζεις μια παράδοση.
Είμαι ανοιχτή στο όποιος θέλει να μάθει.
Ωραία.
Μεγάλες κυρίες εξωτερικού ελληνικής καταγωγής το πήρανε μαζί τους τόσο στην Αφρική όσο και στην Αυστραλία. Αλλά
Θα μπορούσες να κάνεις μαθήματα δηλαδή?
ναι,
Ωραία.
έχω την υπομονή και την πείρα.
Αυτό είναι βέβαιο. Ευχαριστούμε πολύ.
Να είστε καλά.
Σε χαιρετούμε.
Ευχαριστώ.
This is Mum's, which I brought all the way to Ithaca.
Πρώτα, ναι. Δηλαδή η μάνα σου είχε τόσο μεγάλο δίχτυ. Μπορείς να πλέξεις ό,τι μέγεθος δίχτυ ανάλογα με τι βάση θα χρησιμοποιήσεις. Αν το πλέξεις χρειάζεσαι σαΐτα και μία βάση. Μπορεί να είναι βελόνα,
Ναι.
μπορεί να είναι κάποιο άλλο πιο μεγάλο αντικείμενο. Το θα το τεντώσεις, γιατί πλέκεται από γωνία σε γωνία.
Ναι.
Πλέκεται, ναι. Η βάση του μέσα, αυτό είναι τούτο. Για να είναι τετράγωνο θα πρέπει να το βάλεις σε κάποιο σταθερό,
Frame, ναι. Σε τέτοιο.
σε σταθερή βάση.
Ναι.
Όταν το βάλεις και είναι σταθερό τετράγωνο, βγάλεις το σχέδιο που θέλεις.
Ωραία.
Σχέδιο, οποιοδήποτε σχέδιο έχεις από βελονάκι, από... μπορείς να το βάλεις εδώ.
Ναι.
Το βασικό είναι αυτό.
Ναι.
Μία κλωστούλα απάνω, μία κάτω για να έρθει μετά να σταυρώσει. Θέλει υπομονή
Ναι.
και να το και χρόνο.
Patience and time and love. Μπαμπάκι με
μετάξι. Silk.
Μετά.
Είναι πιο γαλιστερό από τον μπομπακερό, το τωρινό, ακόμα και
Ναι.
εκρούνα
Ναι, ναι.
αχρησιμοποιητό. Τούτο είναι πιο γελιστερό.
Ναι.
Τώρα δεν υπάρχει αυτό το νήμα.
Ήταν από
Ναι, γιατί είχαν και μεταξοσκόλικες, είχαν και μπαμπάκια
Ναι.
ή μπορούσαν να βρούνε, υφαίνανε.
Ναι.
Το γνέστανε και το υφαίνανε μόνες τους.
Ναι.
Υπάρχουν πολλές μουριές που σημαίνει ότι ήταν και μεταξοσκόλικες. Είχαν έρθει από την Κωνσταντινούπολη, από
Ναι.
τη Ρουμανία.
Ναι.
Είχε ένα ταραβέρι το φτιάκι λόγω των ναυτικών, των ανθρώπων
Και
που
παίρνανε.
ζούσαν στη Ρουμανία και είχαν συγγενείς στο νησί. Στέλνανε πράγματα, ήταν και τα σελέπια που είχαν στη Ρουμανία που συναντάνε, τα καράβια που πηγαίνανε με εμπορεύματα. Και είχε το φτιάκι μια οικονομική άνεση,
Ναι.
όχι όλος ο κόσμος,
Ναι.
ήταν και εργάτες, αλλά οι καπεταναίοι,
Ναι.
οι ρακούλιδες, κασοπουλέοι,
Ναι.
ήταν πολύ καραβοκίδοι.
Ναι.
Είχαν πολύ ανταπόκριση με Ρουμανία και ας ήταν να περνάνε από τον Ισθμό ή κάτω από το Μαλέα να πάνε να περάσουν τα Δαρδανέλια για να βγουν στη Ρουμανία. Και αυτό το ταραβέρι της θάλασσας φαίνεται στη Βινέτσα του Φλέκη. Δεν έχουμε καμία σχέση με τη Λευκάδα που ήταν κοντά στη στεριά
Ναι.
και θύμιζε στεριά.
Εμείς είχαμε τα καράβια
και
που πηγαίνανε παντού και φέρνανε.
και φέρνανε μαζί και έναν άλλη ποιότητα πολιτισμού. Είχαμε φιλαρμονική χρόνια, δηλαδή από πάντα ήταν ακόμα και το Ίδρυμα Σταθάτου που δημιουργούσε ναυτικούς.
Ναι.
Ήταν γιατί υπήρχε αυτή η μαγιά.
A lot of the Ithacan men were sailors and went to a lot of other countries, not like Lefkada, which was close to the mainland.
Θάλασσα είχε πολύ κοντά,
Ναι.
πολύ κοντινή, δηλαδή ο οποίος πήγαινε Αμερική μπορεί να κάνει και 10 χρόνια να γυρίσει.
Ναι.
Ενώ με τα καράβια κάθε χρόνο ήταν εδώ.
Yes, καλά, σωστά.
Δηλαδή δεν έκαναν την επαφή με την πατρίδα.
Ναι.
Και ότι όμορφο βλέπανε στο εξωτερικό
Ναι.
και Ρουμανία, Ρωσία, όλα αυτά τα
Ναι.
κράτη είχαν πολιτισμό.
Πολιτισμό, και ας ήταν μικρό το νησί.
Και ας ήταν μικρό το νησί, όλα τα φέρνανε.
Ναι.
Υπήρχαν άνθρωποι εδώ που τα κάμανε δικά τους
Yes.
και μείνανε σε εμάς που μετά. Υπάρχει στην Κωνσταντινούπολη,
Ναι.
συναντιέται στη Ρουμανία.
Ναι.
Οπότε δεν είναι δυνατόν να δημιουργήθηκε στο φτιάκι και να πει εκεί.
Ναι. Ναι, ναι, σωστά. Τα φέρνανε.
Τα φέρνανε.
Ναι.
Την τεχνική με τα υλικά υπήρχαν στο νησί.
Ναι. Και θέλω να σε ρωτήσω κάτι για το ρίτσο. Είναι θιακό αυτό? Είναι το έχουμε για θιακό?
Κοίταξε να δεις, είναι από τραόμαλο. Οπότε
η πρώτη ύλη για να φτιάχνετε.
Ναι.
Είναι τραόμαλο να κατεμένο με μπαμπακερό.
Ναι,
Δεν έχει μία ποιότητα.
ναι.
Και γινόταν στον αργαλιό που σχεδόν όλα τα σπίτια είχαν αργαλιό.
Αλλά στην Ελλάδα εννοώ, τα κάνανε αυτά, αυτό το στυλ, το ρίτσο που έχουμε, τα κάνανε αλλού.
Συναντιέται σε πολλά μέρη, δηλαδή
Ναι.
με χρώματα.
Ναι.
Είναι και στα Γιάννενα, στο...
Α, είναι.
Ναι, δηλαδή τα συναντάς. Απλά η κάθε περιοχή
Έχει το στυλ.
ένα διαφορετικό λουλούδι.
Α.
Δηλαδή...
Καταλαβαίνω, γιατί στην Αυστραλία νομίζουμε πολύ ότι είναι μόνο στην Ιτάκη τα έχουν αυτά.
Όχι,
Γιατί κάθε σπίτι έχει.
Έχει.
Ενώ οι φιλενάδες μου που είναι από Σάμο, δεν τα έχουνε, δεν ξέρω γιατί. Αλλά μήπως το είχαν εδώ πιο κάτι σπουδαίο, δεν ξέρω ακριβώς.
Απλά σου λέω, όλα αυτά υπάρχουν μέσα σε όλα τα σπίτια,
Ναι.
γιατί ήταν και τρόπος επιβίωσης, έπρεπε να έχουν κάτι να σκεπαστούν.
Ναι, η γιαγιά σου τα έπρεπε αυτά στο πόλεμο.
Έπλεκε πριν τον πόλεμο.
Ναι.
Πέθανε ο αδερφός της όταν αυτή ήταν 6 χρονών.
Ναι,
Και κλεισμένη μες στο σπίτι, κάποια στιγμή έμαθε να πλέκει.
ναι,
Είχε χρόνο,
ναι.
είχαν την άνεση να πλέκουν, να παίρνει τα υλικά, δεν ξέρω πώς, δεν
Ναι.
τη ρώτησα ποτέ. Και ξέρω ότι είχε πάρα πολλά στα ντουλάπια της τέτοια.
Και τα πουλά η
Και
γιαγιά.
με τον πόλεμο ή αγόρασε στάρι για να έχουν να σπείρουνε ή αγόρασε αλεύρι για να έχουν να πάνε όταν
Αυτό είναι.
ήταν
Αυτό
δύσκολο.
είναι. Πολύ δύσκολα. Ευχαριστώ για αυτή την ιστορία.
I might bring Sophia up to read the first anecdote from Eleftheria Raftopoulou.
My mother, Evgenia Baxinou Raftopoulou, lived in Frikes, a village on the Ionian island of Ithaca. She was born in 1919 and, as it was custom then, learnt all the crafts that were needed if she was to become a good housewife. Embroidery, crocheting, knitting, dressmaking and weaving clothes on the loom. One of the crafts she had to do but did not like was making linen yarn, which was messy, hard work and difficult. There are quite a few stages to go through, and the first one, of course, was to grow the flax from which the linen thread comes from. I remember very well the field in which the flax was planted because of its pretty purple blue flowers. Mum explained that once the flax grew to the right size of about 1 metre high, it was harvested by pulling it out and loaded on our donkey that took it to a pond near another village called Lahos and left it to soak. According to Mum, the soaking flax gave out an undesirable putrid smell. It took a while to soften the flax, but when ready, my mother, her mother and a few other helpers took the flax out of the smelly pond. The next steps were to dry the wet flax, then to beat it, and after that to comb it, so as to separate the fibres which were spun on the spinning wheel to make linen yarn. My paternal nuna was a whiz kid at it. She was still spinning wool, aged 92. Before the final step came, the cleaning of the yarn, and after that was the weaving on our loom, which was ready and waiting downstairs in our katoi. Both my mother and nuna spent the midnight oil making all sorts of linen cloths. Every now and then I had a go at working the loom, but was too small to make it work properly. There's some photos, apparently. No, we don't have photos, but if we did, they show the various tools that our family used for the preparation of linen. 3 beaters, 2 carding brushes, a spinning wheel, 2 loom pedals, a very old linen towel still in use, and my 19-year-old nuna, Angeliki Petala Raftopoulou, making woolen yarn. She would have used the same tools to make the linen yarn. The loom was given away to a relative. And then there's 2 others. This one is from Konstantina Manalatos. These 2 are just a lot shorter. My very dear sweet mother-in-law, Katerini Manalatos, I didn't practice these names, Triliva, did tatting, a lost art, to supplement the family income. An order was due for delivery, but Kathryn knew it was impossible to fulfill, so the word got around with her friends and they all rallied together and sat up all night and it was finished. Such great dedication and friendships, and of course the beautiful intricate lace works created. May all the memories we have live on for generations. And the last one is from Panayota Gandiliotis. Really putting me under pressure. My mum exchanged oil for 2 sacks of sheep wool, which she washed in the ocean and made her threads, which she used on her ergalio, and made that blanket. My sister's laughing at me. It took her 2 years to complete, as she told me a few days before I lost her. I thank you for letting me share this, and the blanket is priceless to me.
Sophia is my daughter, and I did surprise her and ask her to read that. All those anecdotes were taken off our Facebook, Ithacan Facebook community group. I've been posting for years, and I often try to get interest through posting pictures of, my embroideries and things, and get people talking. And these were all written on this Facebook group, which I, maybe 10 years ago even, but I searched for them and found them, and as you can see, they're priceless words. Effie, or Eleftheria Raftopoulou, is Leo Raftopoulos' sister, who lives in England. Leo lives in Brisbane. And Konstantina Manolatos is the mother of Kathryn, the singer, who also lives in Brisbane. And Panayota Gandilotis, I don't think I know that well, but I just wanted to maybe give you some context and thank these women for giving me these lovely stories.
All these doilies were handmade by my auntie and my mother, which I have kept. They have been made with much love and care. I've sorted them out. So my grandchildren might like to have some. The coffee table. Amazing work they used to do. My auntie made, my sister and me, cot bed covers.
Similar to Mum's one?
That one. And also single bed covers. That one is a single bed cover. This is a single bed. That would have been probably on the spinning wheel and loom. That's a single bed cover. That was made by my auntie. And I've got one. My sister had one. And also, these was the bed, single bed covers and cot cover, which, yes.
And now your great-grandchild has one.
Now that my great-grandchild has the cot cover. So, and my grandson used this as a bed cover. Nice memories, family memories. They're made by my auntie. They used to spin that would be my grandmother probably, spin the grow linen, the linen seeds, and make linen out of it, and make tea towels and bath towels, linen ones. They were teachers, my auntie and mother, for the embroidery, and when girls
got married in those days, they had what they call prika in their dowry, and they taught many of them how to make, and they even made for some girls their sheets, embroidered them, and towels and that. Yes. It would be nice if people continued to do these things. They also nice memories. I've used them many times. It's sort of become out of fashion a bit. But I've kept them, and I want them to stay in the family. It's nice memories. Every time I got one from my auntie, I was really proud. I've had them since I was married, 60 years or something. No, but that's first they send me something. Yes. When the ships used to come out, and there was someone up the corridor, they'd bring you a present. I remember Mum, she would crochet for the grandchildren little cardigans or something. Sometimes knit them, sometimes crochet them.
Do you have any or no?
No. They're nice memories, and they're nice to have and use.
Were you ever taught how to do anything like this, or you just
No,
knitting?
Knitting.
Yeah.
Just knitting. Yeah. Just knitting and a bit of embroidery by hand.
Yeah.
Little doilies, I spoon there. Think like that I could do. Yeah. Not this, but I think too my mum mightn't have had the time working in the shop. But she used to get the crocheting thing, needle out, and she might crochet something like,
Yeah.
or something like this, or a knit, like a knitting little cardigan or something. For my father, because woolen socks, and 4 little needles sort of knitted around it somehow, and because if you notice the socks don't have a seam, so they knit with these 4 tiny needles and go around. And he used to wear thick woolen socks because he used to get up very early and go to the market to do the shopping for the fruit. And
And just without a pattern, she just knew.
Pardon that?
Without like a pattern or.
Without a pattern.
She just.
They did it without a pattern.
Intuition.
They would knit whole jumpers, cardigans, anything without a pattern.
Wow.
What size needle to pick for the thickness of the wool and that. All without a pattern.
Yeah.
They had the experience. They started very young. So, yes. One day I just decided, and I said, I'm going to put them all in the box and keep them up with that little notice there.
Yeah.
No. It's a big one, a small one. Which one was it? That one? Yeah. See, it's different too. Wait a minute. I think that one, and it should have more than one of these. See, that one. There's a little one there. That sort of goes like that, yeah.
Yeah, I like that shape.
That would be with that one. See?
Yeah, here's another pair.
Would be that one. Is that another one? Yeah. Sometimes they're similar, but different on the outside. That would be more like it, this one and that, I think. The small ones. It's similar to that. I think these ones were from my auntie. She used to send me presents like that. all the time. Send us, yeah. This is a little display of the work they used to do, which was beautiful. Maybe one day it'll all come back. No good at speech.
It's okay.
What should I be saying? I don't know.
So we're now going to hear from our special speaker today, our guest speaker, Kathryn Gauci. Kathryn is a best-selling author and textile historian. She studied textile design and specialised in carpet design and technology before moving to Athens, Greece, to work as a carpet designer for several years. She ran her own textile studio in Melbourne before turning to writing full-time with her first novel, The Embroiderer, inspired by her years travelling for textile design purposes. She went on to write a number of other novels of historical fiction, which are on display today in the back, just at the entrance. And these novels have received numerous international awards. Today, Kathryn will present a short history of textiles and textile production, specifically as they pertain to the Hellenic and the Greek world. So without further ado, I welcome Kathryn to the floor.
Thank you to Debbie and Peter and the Ithacan community for inviting me to speak today. It's a great honour. Let me say from the start that I'm not familiar with Ithacan textiles. Well, I wasn't until now. That filet work is amazing. But I am familiar with Greek textiles in general, particularly carpets, embroidery, and garments. And so that is what I want to focus on today. As we only have a short time, I will focus on just a few areas. But for a moment, I want us to reflect on how important textiles are in the history of civilization. Indeed, if we go back through the ages, textiles are the stuff of legends. Man's ingenuity to create, adapt, and discover new horizons is all-encompassing in commerce and trade, science and fashion. Always fashion. Because what good is all this if we don't have the desire for beautiful things? The textile world, particularly wool, made the Minoans rich. It funded the Italian Renaissance and the Mughal and Ottoman Empire, giving rise to many artistic splendors that are still with us today. When I lived in Athens in the 1970s, I worked as a carpet designer for the largest carpet company in Greece, Anatolia. It was there that I got to know the shared heritage between Greece and the Ottoman Empire. And so it is with carpets that I will begin this presentation. When I purchased an upright Turkish loom in Athens, I was aware that I was following in the footsteps of a tradition that has been handed down from generation to generation with hardly any change at all over centuries. The factory, Anatolia, produced machine-made carpets, which is quite a different process to the handmade ones, but it was situated in the Athens suburb of Neonia Kalogreza, and the majority of the workers were refugee families from the Asia Minor catastrophe of 1919 to 1922-23, who arrived in 1922 or during the population exchange. At that time, at the time I lived there, I discovered that many families still wove the traditional hand-knotted carpets on their old looms in their homes. After a while, I decided to purchase my own loom from a family where the older generation still spoke Turkish as their first language, something that came as a great surprise because this was 50 years after the catastrophe. Indeed, this was not uncommon for many people to speak Turkish in those days.
More importantly, the family was kind enough to give me their tools of trade, a carpet beater, a pair of special scissors with an adjustable attachment to cut the pile to the desired height, and a carpet knife. What touched me the most was that I knew that these would have been handed down as treasured tools from generation to generation, and in many cases would have been part of a dowry, especially the beater. Today these tools are hard to find. We kept the upright loom in our bedroom, just as Elpida did in my book, The Carpet Weaver of Ushak. We dyed our own yarn, and of course I painted the design, first on squared paper, which as much as I did when I did the designs in the factory. Whilst there were one or two carpet knotting weaving workshops in Greece before the refugees arrived, I believe somewhere near Sparta, prior to this it was mainly flat woven kalims and flaccati rugs that were being produced. So it wasn't until after 1923 when the carpet workshops really took off in Greece due to the skill of the weavers brought with them from Anatolia. Just going to make myself more comfortable. Knotted carpets have a long history, so let's take a step back in time to see where they began. From the evidence so far, carpet weaving is thought to have begun in East Turkestan, the Mongolia region, an area populated by nomadic sheep herders. The oldest carpet found was discovered in a Scythian burial mound in the Altai region of southern Siberia, and it's dating to about 500 BC. This carpet is known as the Pazyryk, and it's now in the Hermitage. Because of the geographical position in the tomb, it is in excellent condition. The carpet was found wrapped around a chieftain in the manner of a cloak, so it's thought that maybe the first knotted carpets were an attempt to simulate a woolen fleece. The designs resemble Assyrian, Achaemenian and Scythian motifs, and it has, unbelievably, over 200 knots per square inch, and is woven with the Turkish knot as opposed to the Persian knot, which is different. Carpet weaving moved into Persia and into Turkey with the Seljuk Turks. During the transition from the Seljuk to the Ottoman Empire, high quality rugs were being produced in Turkey, most of which we see in early European paintings. During the second half of the 15th century, carpets, which we've come to know as Holbein or Lotto carpets through the paintings of Hans Holbein and Lorenzo Lotto, are thought to have come from the area around Ushak in western Anatolia. By the 16th and 17th century, Ushak had become one of the most important centers of Ottoman weaving and the construction of most fine Turkish carpets using the Turkish knot are exactly the same as the Pazyryk. So good is the technique. I'm just going back here. Here I'm showing the Turkish knot, which is the most typical knot. And it's very important to know that with the Turkish knot, a lot of the designs are quite geometric because the knotting style leads itself to that. Whereas with the Persian knot, we can get more curvilinear styles, and here we see the carpet design on the paper. All carpets since that time, except for more simplified or tribal designs, which are mostly woven through memory, are first painted onto this squared paper for the weaver to see. And nothing's changed in all those years. And I have at the back, I've brought a few samples which are over 100 years old, with the painting on the squared paper. Without going into the various designs of Ushak carpets, what was important was that knotted carpet weaving flourished, in part due to the patronage from the Sultan, and to a larger extent to the capitulations given to Levantine traders, which enabled these carpets to be exported to all parts of the globe. Unlike Persia, which mainly produced court carpets or carpets for diplomatic gifts at the time, the Turkish carpet trade flourished to such an extent that at the time of the outbreak of World War I, it was the second largest industry after tobacco. By capitulations, I mean treaties with the Ottomans, which had been in existence under the Byzantines. The Europeans were thus subject to their own national laws and paid virtually no tax at all, the Amazon, Google, and Facebooks of their day. A few years prior to the outbreak of World War I, the carpet exporters had become so big they formed cartels and employed thousands of weavers all over central and eastern Anatolia, besides the workshops in Ushak. The largest family in the cartel was the Spitali family, who were originally Armenian, but later came under an Italian family through marriage. There were also two major English factories, one of which had a French connection, and the Turkish Kolkazada family. When they amalgamated in 1907, the cartel was legally an English company, even though it was registered in Smyrna. In its heyday, the cartel employed 100,000 weavers working on 20,000 looms, and carpets were woven in 27 towns throughout Turkey. Along with the dye works, woolen mills, and other types of woven cloth, the industry was immense. Although this is Giords, it is exactly the same as the looms that they would have in Ushak. As we know, the Ottoman Empire was a cosmopolitan one. Throughout Turkey, the carpet industry employed mostly Greeks and Armenians, not because they considered them to be better weavers, but because Muslims would not allow company inspectors to enter their houses to check the carpets. As almost all the carpets were being exported, they had to comply to a certain standard, so it proved to be too difficult a task. With the ascent of the Young Turks, the country entered a new era, which was quickly overshadowed by the political upheavals at the time. First, the Balkan Wars, which not only brought Balkan Muslim refugees into the country by the thousands, but diseases also. And the carpet manufacturers and exporters started to suffer. When Turkey entered World War I on the side of Germany and Austria-Hungary, the Young Turks abolished the capitulations, and the cartel was given the option of either registering as a Turkish company or be considered an enemy of the state and leave. Now the government had more revenue for the war effort. Woolen mills were obliged to weave cloth for the army, and the carpet manufacturing side sank even further. Further problems occurred with the loss of Armenian weavers, and then the Greeks, after the Greek army landed in Smyrna in 1919. The town of George, whose name is given to the famous Turkish knot, was virtually destroyed in 1921. When Mustafa Kemal's nationalists retook Anatolia from the Greek army and entered Smyrna, the cartel's head office and warehouse, which was on the waterfront, burnt down during the Great Fire, and the entire stock was lost. They were not the only ones to lose a fortune. The American Tobacco Company also suffered the same fate. To add to these devastating losses, insurance companies refused to pay out, stating that the losses were an act of war and not an accident. The losses amounted to millions of dollars. I'm just including this one, the kilims, because the kilims were also very popular, but more so as dowry pieces. And note the slits in the design, which makes them a true kilim, as opposed to just a flat weave rug. These were also made on the upright looms, but could be made on the horizontal loom too. When the Greek refugees fled, they took their skills with them, and in the ensuing years of poverty and disillusionment because many had expected to return to Turkey after the war, they slowly began to establish a handmade knotted carpet industry throughout Greece, but it would never be on the scale that it was in Turkey. After the situation settled in Turkey and the new Turkish Republic found its feet, commerce started to improve again. Indeed, only 1 year after the Great Fire of Smyrna, there were advertisements appearing in English newspapers asking for experienced dyers in Ushak. The address of the office was given as Smyrna. Just as things started to improve, the Wall Street crash came and commerce was sent into a spiral again. So the carpet industry would never recover to the great heights of the early 20th century. In the following years, Persian weavers started to compete with Turkish weavers in the export market, and the modernization of industrial carpet looms further impacted the craft. In 1929, the year of the Wall Street crash, this was also another year where another type of carpet began to be woven in Greece. The Australian philanthropist and self-trained doctor Joyce Nankerville Locke settled in the village of Uranopolis near the monasteries of Mount Athos. It had become a refugee village, and the villagers were in dire straits. They lacked any form of income and had no money for medicines. With funds dwindling, Joyce realized that some of the villagers were skilled carpet weavers and immediately hatched a plan to help the starving families by starting a rug weaving enterprise. After discussing the idea with a weaver from Kayseri in central Anatolia, the woman disappeared inside her house and emerged with a pile of shimmering silks, enough to make several rugs. Joyce went to the local carpenter and commissioned several looms. It so happened that the carpenter was also from Kayseri and had previously made looms. Before long, a women's cooperative was established and Pyrgos Rugs was born. Wool was purchased by Joyce from further afield and died in Uranopolis. The Byzantine tower where Joyce lived with her husband Sidney became a dye house for natural dyes. Each recipe was noted down in order to give consistency. One major problem arose. The weavers all wanted to make Turkish designs woven over generations by their ancestors. Joyce, on the other hand, wanted to make Byzantine designs. The monks of Mount Athos would never let a woman into their libraries, and Joyce was forced to draw upon her extensive knowledge of Byzantine art in the churches and on embroideries she'd seen on her travels. Still, the arguments persisted. At one point, a village leader came to her and said, "I am sorry, Kyriolok, but rugs have always been Turkish. No one will buy Greek rugs." In the end, Joyce got the women on her side. If they sold, then they would continue. Much to the astonishment of the village men in particular, 3 of Pyrgos Rug's carpets won first prize in the International Trade Fair in Thessaloniki. The American Board of Missions recognized the skills would allow the women to sustain themselves and agreed to fund her work. Over time, she would add pre-Christian designs such as those from Knossos. It became a financial success and saved the lives of the villagers. In the 21st century, hand-knotted carpets have declined in Greece. Today's modern lifestyle has much to do with this. So let's move back a century now to the birth of the Hellenic Republic. On the 22nd of November 1836, in the Great Palace at Oldenburg, Germany, a marriage took place between Amalia, daughter of the Grand Duke Paul Frederick August of Oldenburg, and King Otto of Greece. The following spring, Otto and Amalia landed in Piraeus and drove to Athens, the new capital of the fledgling Greek kingdom. Amalia was wearing a fashionable white silk dress and a huge picture hat. Otto, on the other hand, on the advice of his father, was wearing the fustanella. During the early years after the War of Independence, Greece was in a state of social flux, with the population including people of Greek descent from various countries. So the couple recognized that establishing a new identity was of vital importance. Europe as a whole was taking a particular interest in the newly independent state, and symbolism was crucial. Otto played his part by adopting the fustanella, which transcended national and linguistic divisions, and Queen Amalia, for her part, set about designing a form of dress which was inspired by contemporary European fashion and Greek Ottoman costume. A mixture of East and West suited everyone. The prevailing fashion in ladies' dress can be seen in this lithograph here, which is called Greek Wedding in Athens, 1819, by Louis Dupré. We can see that it depicts a few styles, and there were many more. The central figure, the bride, wears an ontari, similar to the Turkish style, and it was worn over a chemise with long white bloomers, and shalvar. On her right, the woman with the child is wearing a costume worn by most country women in Attica, known as avanitika, and the chemise is richly decorated. On her left, the woman is obviously a Muslim, as she is wearing a white headscarf that covers part of her face. The other woman, a Christian, wears a long stole. And here also we see the picture of Katerina Botsaris in her Amalia costume. The repertoire of dress was broadened even further with the introduction of foreign styles. For example, the fanariots from Constantinople, who had a lot of influence in fashion. Western travelers and Jewish merchants also flocked to Athens at this time, and among the avanitika could be seen gossamer gowns made by Parisian couturiers, mostly worn by the fanariot ladies, who set the new social circles in Athens. To this varied scene, Amalia added a touch of her own when she asked her ladies in waiting, who were related to the famous fighters of the Greek Revolution, to wear a costume of their respective places of origin. The names of these women alone are interesting, as we see they comprise of the creme de la creme of the most famous names associated with the revolution. Yeneus Kolokotroni's wife, Photini, the daughter of Photos Savelis, decided on an outfit that was a cross between the Suliot and the Peloponnesian costumes. Kyriakoula Kraitsi, the daughter of Yorgos Vulgaris, Bey of Hydra and wife of Anatolius Kraitsis, opted for the local costume of Hydra, as did Kondilo Mioli, daughter of Yorgos Kondoriotis and wife of Athanasius Miolis, who was one of King Otto's aide-de-camp and Prime Minister of Greece. Maria Monachidou, the daughter of Admiral Nikos Apostolis of Psara, wore a costume of that island, and we must not forget Photini Mavromikalis, the daughter of Petrobe Mavromikalis, and Katerina Votsaris, daughter of Marcos Votsaris. Although these clothes were a way to honor the Greek Revolution, Queen Amalia's new fashion was more of a romantic folkloric version of what we now call the Amalia costume. So the components of the Amalia dress, it comprised of three main garments: a chemise, dress and short jacket. The skirt was designed in the Biedermeier, or the Austrian and German style of the period, and the close-fitting bodice takes its shape from the kavadi worn by the Athenian ladies. This was a short-waisted dress with a close-fitting bodice, long white sleeves, which were open at the sides to show the embroidery on the sleeves of the chemise. The costume was made of silk, often decorated with woven with floral motifs and embroidered with gold thread. Another borrowing from the traditional Athenian dress was the zipuni kondogouni, which was a short, very low-necked jacket hugging the chest tightly. The colors were generally black, red, or dark blue, and sewn and embroidered with silken cords, sometimes of gold and silver. These clothes were made by specialist tailors called tedsidas. To complement the outfit, there was a cap with gold embroidery and a silk tassel of plaited gold threads, often decorated with pearls or spangles. It was noted that although the woman wore this cap, they also wore a black lace mantilla when they entered the church. For all this, so I'm just showing here some of the laid cord technique and devour what we call, I'll leave that till later. So this is the lace cord technique, but for all this, Amalia herself preferred only to wear the costume on special occasions. So unlike Otto, she preferred Parisian costumes. It was landmark in the history of Greek fashion and gained popularity in the Balkans too. However, it was not haute couture and remained more of a symbol of modern Greece. Here we can see the main type of embroidery again, this laid cord technique, which was another very important type of embroidery used in the Ottoman Empire, but adapted by other ethnic groups too. The Ottoman Bindali, 1,000 branches, worked in the Duval technique. The type of embroidery this type of embroidery was popular from clothing and furnishing to money and tobacco pouches and document wallets. It is essentially couching. I will show you some more. It is essentially couching over cutouts of cardboard and is relatively easy to do than some other stitch work, but still requires patience. And so here we can see in this one that the preliminary design is a cardboard shape, and then the metal thread is couched over the top. Now let's move to a few examples of clothing and into embroidery, as costumes varied so much from place to place. We cannot put them all up here, so I've chosen a few of my favorites. But first I want to point out that in keeping with Ottoman textiles too, there were certain items of clothing or for the home that were deemed very important. Most embroideries were carried out as part of the bridal trousseau. They were produced and cared for by women of all ages and used to showcase the good taste and domestic talents of their makers, while at the same time demonstrating the family's wealth and social standing and ethnic affiliations. Sometimes only minor differences conveyed cultural differences. The difference between areas is in large part due to the various spheres of influence they came under. For example, Crete had a strong Venetian influence, then Ottoman, and also Mamluk. Naxos was also strongly Venetian. Other areas in the Aegean, such as the Dodecanese, were apportioned to the Crusaders who came from various parts of Europe. Chios was influenced by the Genoese and for centuries remained a cornerstone of the Genoese silk and textile industry, and Epirus had a strong Ottoman influence. Among the most important for clothing was the chemise, the sash, and the kerchief. Because of their size, the sash and kerchief were easier to work. In household textiles, bath towels and napkins were also at the top, followed by bedspreads and bed linen, cushions and wall runners, but these could also be flat woven. So let's run through a few examples of costumes and home embroideries from the different regions. I've just put this in here because it's an example that there were professional embroiderers, and also a professional school of embroidery was set up in Athens when Greece gained independence. So the sampler books were very important. The foundation fabric in Crete was often cotton and linen, and the island was divided into those who produced monochrome embroideries, namely red or blue silk, and those who used a rich and varied colour palette. Motifs included mythical creatures, including mermaids, double-headed eagles, vases, flowers, and an aviary of exotic birds, worked in Cretan feather stitch, couching, satin stitch, and herringbone stitch. In the sporades, fine undyed linen is the foundation with vibrant coloured embroidery and freestyle compositions that often reflect the strong association with Ottoman arts. Motifs include lively birds, such as the cockerel, and human figures involved in various activities. Stitches are generally satin stitch, split stitch, and running stitch. In the Cyclades of Naxos, scholars group embroideries from this region into roughly 3 stylistic groups: running stitch, satin stitch, and cross stitch. All 3 of these stitch types rely on counting the warp and weft on the ground fabric. The running stitch style is characterized by the flexibility of this stitch, and embroiderers would usually use one color, often red, to create the design, though gold, green, and blue were also used, as seen in this example. The style is especially compelling because the embroiderers could make the same color silk thread catch the light differently by changing the direction of their stitch. The satin stitch style features many more colors than the running stitch style. Kos and the Dodecanese, or the Dodecanese, executed on undyed linen. The fabric from the southern islands are often heavier than the north, and motifs favoured include vases and pots, the broadleaf and branch patterns, but I particularly love the green parrots, which is not on that one. The most popular stitch is cross stitch, and the silk is often thicker than in other areas. Finally, we come to Epirus. This region has a wider range of embroideries due to the stronger impact of outside influences. Its provincial capital, Ioannina, was a thriving commercial city with a reputation as a centre for embroidery, which it exported to the south of Greece, Anatolia, and the rest of the Balkans. The designs are worked in vibrant silks and the motifs floral and vegetal, with birds and figures depicting regional dress. Typical Ottoman motifs were also used: the hyacinth, tulips, carnations, and serrated saz leaves. The embroideries with figures tend to be elaborate and fine. Stitches include surface darning, chain stitch, and herringbone stitch. For this last part, let's look at the influence of classical Greek costume on fashion. And here I'm not talking about the Renaissance, but Victorian England and other European countries. The influence of Greek sculptural ideas are well known. In her book, The Art of Beauty, written in 1879, the writer on fashion in clothing, Eliza Howes, used the Tanagra terracottas to illustrate how Greek women dressed, using numerous folds to reveal and conceal the body, and how gracefully the dress followed the movements of the body. At this time, there was a revival of classicism in painting and sculpture, which was an important influence on theatre, decorative style, and fashion of the period. However, it was the major archaeological discoveries that brought the public attention to it. In art, we see such painters as Alma Tadema, Godwin, and Frederick Leighton, using classical settings with reclining females dressed in diaphanous clothing, and these artists were responsible for creating the new fashions. Tadema tea gowns became fashionable from the 1870s onwards, but rather than being entirely historically accurate, all this was more of a rebellion against the Western corseted fashion of the period. This was the age of the new discoveries in archaeology and the Parthenon sculptures associated with the sculptor Phidias, the mausoleum of Halicarnassus in Bodrum, and Schleman's discovery at Mycenae. And other great finds. They were all hugely influential. Dress reform was part of a wider movement around sanitary conditions and healthy living. The freedom of Grecian dress was thought to be healthy, and a healthy body made for a healthy mind. The emphasis is clear. These forms were the mothers, the people who wore these forms were the mothers and sisters who bred the greatest civilization in the world. Ithaca House states that no generation of care has made the British body more beautiful than like the Greeks were. Quite a statement. She's particularly talking about the deformities that have come about with wearing corsets in Western Europe, hence wanting to revolutionize and free up fashion again. Small waists are not natural, states one observer. Now we come to the Delphos dress. At the beginning of the 20th century, fashion designers took on this freedom of movement in clothing with gusto. The indulgent spirit of the pre-World War I Paris meant that art movements and personal aesthetic ideals were carved out of a rich minority's lofty visions. While French designer Paul Poiret looked towards Orientalism, another man took the fashion world by storm when he created one of the most iconic dresses of the 20th century. That dress, known as the Delphos dress, and was by the designer Mariano Fortuny y Madrazo. Mariano was Spanish and one of the most creative designers of the early 20th century. Born in Granada, both his parents were painters and great collectors of ancient Oriental fabrics. He would go on to create some of the most unique and exquisite collections ever to grace the catwalks. In 1897, he met his wife, Henrietta Negrin, an experienced dressmaker who could help him in his work. The pair left Paris and moved to Palazzo Pesaro Orfi, now the Fortuny Museum in Venice, where he would live and work inspired by his surroundings until his death in 1949. Between 1901 and 1934, Fortuny painted no fewer than 20 inventions, but it was his inventiveness with dyeing and textiles, combined with the love of women's clothing, as depicted in classical Greek art, that was to skyrocket him to fame. The light and airy women's clothing of classical Greece was the inspiration behind this famous Delphos gown. And of course, the inspiration was the charioteer of Delphi. The Delphos created a sensation when it was shown in 1907, a year after he opened his couture house. When it was originally designed, it was intended to be an informal tea gown, solely for the privacy of the home, but it went far beyond that. The rich and the famous vied with each other to wear one. Marcel Proust wrote about it. Theatrical legends such as Isadora Duncan and Sarah Bernhardt wore one. Gloria Vanderbilt, Peggy Guggenheim, Mrs. Condé Nast, Lauren Bacall, and more recently, Mary in Downton Abbey. What helped to really make Fortuny's simple shift dress was the fabric. Finely pleated silk weighted down by Venetian glass beads, which allowed the fabric to hold its shape and flow on the body. Such simplicity needs little else, perhaps a waistband. Fortuny patented his own pleating machine and would take his secret to the grave. What we do know of this particular technique is that it involved heat, pressure, and ceramic rods. Each dress was individually dyed using his own formulation of pigments and dyes based on ancient techniques, which gave his materials the appearance of authentic antiquity and which shimmered like the skin of a snake. The whole effect, texture, shape, and color change according to the light and movement. It's timeless. And he also created the Delphos scarf, which particularly was used in the theatre. And I would like to just show you then that it also patented a technique to print Byzantine designs on velvet. And there is one more person in modern fashion whose name deserves a mention for drawing upon classical art for inspiration, and that is Madame Gray. Gray, born Germaine Grebes in Paris in 1903, originally wanted to be a sculptor, but was unsuccessful. She then ventured into millinery, changing her name to Alex Barton. Her design house would be known as Alex from 1934 through to 1942. She first gained attention by designing the costumes from Girardot's play The Trojan War Will Not Take Place, and quickly became a leading designer of the day. Her clients included everyone from duchesses to movie stars: Grace Kelly, Greta Garbo, Marlene Dietrich, and a few of her more famous clients. Well, just a few of her more famous clients. The New York Times called her couture house the most intellectual place in Europe to buy clothes. "I wanted to be a sculptor," Gray once said. "For me, it's the same thing to work the fabric or the stone." And it is acknowledged that she was indeed a true sculptor of fabric. Her favorite fabric was silk jersey, and a single dress could take from 13 to 21 meters. Her talent for pleating could reduce 9 feet of fabric to a mere 2.8 inches. The drapery of her gowns also showed her technical virtuosity. Long swags of continuous strips of fabric would be incorporated into the front and back of the gown, giving her work a sense of classical antiquity. She also introduced the idea of cutouts, creating little windows in her gowns which revealed the back or the shoulder. Wearers of her gowns have said that they felt perfectly secure in them. So impeccable was the construction. Madame Gray is widely regarded as one of the most brilliant couturiers of the 20th century and an inspiration for many later couturiers. Her work remains timeless. Because of the way tradition has inspired couture, I thought I would just add these, mainly because I think they're fabulous. The one on the far side is from the House of Worth at the end of the 19th century, and the other is a relatively recent design by a modern couturier, but I'm not sure which one. And so as we conclude, we can see that there is so much to draw on today from Greek art and costume. The sky is the limit, and I hope these examples have inspired you. Thank you, everyone.
That was phenomenal. Thank you, Kathryn. What a wealth of knowledge. And some of those visuals of the embroideries and the pleating just mind-boggling. Kathryn will be here at the end, I'm sure, and is willing to answer any further questions. And I know that 2 of her novels, at least, correct me if I'm wrong, Kathryn, are textile related, specifically The Embroiderer and The Carpet Weaver of Ushak. Yeah. So I'm sure she'd be willing to have her brains picked for further information, although there was a lot there.
What an absolutely delightful way to finish such a wonderful session today, being able to celebrate the wonderful legacy that we have as Ithacans and Greeks and the wider community. So we really appreciate the marvellous speakers, presenters, and just the wealth of knowledge that we've learned today, and being able to share our culture with you all. And we look forward to seeing that on the website as well. And thank you very much, all of you who've done just an incredible amount of research and work. And look forward to the new year when we'll have more sessions like this. We've got our cooking classes coming back in the new year, so everyone's always excited about our cooking classes. So we're going to start off with our famous Ithacan Rovani in the new year. So keep an eye out for that invitation. Thank you very much for being here. We appreciate your support. Please, if you'd like to be members, you can always ask me or any of the committee members that are here and would like you to be members. So look forward to seeing you. Have a great break in the coming weeks, and we'll see you then.